Hi everybody, on this video I'll show you a simple way on how to create this scene with the tools available in Clip Studio Paint. Let's begin. We want to create a fire animation for the scene, and a simple way to do it is setting on a layer with a circle as a guide. One of the ways we can draw a fire is imagine a circle slowly ascending from the base of the fire, expanding in the middle and then shrinking at the end. This will give us the inertia and the rhythm we are looking for. So the first thing we need to do is to create a circle with a figure ruler, and we need to enable the keyframes for this layer. Now, just as we saw in this example, we will set up the circle slowly ascending from the base of the fire. Then it will be expanding on the middle and shrinking at the end. For this cycle, we will use 24 frames in total. This circle will just be used as a reference, so we can just copy this layer and repeat it over and over across the timeline. Now that we have all of this set up, we can create an animation folder and start drawing our keyframes. So for the first frame, we should try to stay as close as possible to the circle. But just remember that the fire should match the height of the last circle of the frames we just set up. To check that, you can move forward in the timeline and make sure the frame covers that whole range of movement. After that, we can just proceed to the second keyframe, and we make small changes to the silhouette of the fire. Fire has the advantage that the shape doesn't have to be 100% consistent, but we should follow the general shape and not make changes that are too abrupt, or you will notice it in the final animation. Now, for every subsequent frame, we try to do the same. We try to follow the circle, but also keeping into account that as the circle ascends and gets farther away from the base of the fire itself will start to separate and break from it. So the middle area will start to shrink as this happens. However, the base never shrinks. It is anchored to the ground. And once the fire at the top has separated, we can start drawing that piece of the fire shrinking and zigzagging as it fails to keep this integrity. And now we can press play and see how it looks. To add more detail to this animation, we can create a second animation folder for the middle zone of the flame. This one can be a bit more erratic than the general animation of the main frame. However, we also need to keep into account that the changes of the general geometry, in which some areas of the flames are dragged upwards and are broken apart. And after finishing drawing all these frames, this is how it looks. However, the animation we have is slightly slow and low frame rate. That's good depending on the stylistic choice you make, but for this time we will just draw the in-betweens for each keyframe, tying up every frame into a more fluid animation. And remember to enable the setting for the onion skins to be able to see your previous and next frames at every point in your timeline. And also, we'll do this for the secondary animation of the center of the flame. And now this is how our final animation looks. It is a little bit more fluid and smooth. And the next thing we need to do is to add color to these frames. But we only have line work, so we need to use the bucket tool and fill every frame with a solid color to be able to colorize it afterwards. And we do the same for the secondary animation. Now we proceed to create a new layer on top of the animation folder. We need to clip it and add color. For this I use a gradient, and afterwards I use the airbrush and create a layer on top of everything, set it to add glow, and paint it on top of the fire. This will give us that effect of the fire casting light. But even with that, the scene looks a little bit flat. A thing we can do is make the light casting of the character change with the passing of time. I already have this layer set up on top of the character that gives this effect of those areas being illuminated directly by the fire. So we use that layer and put it on an animation folder and copy it every 3 frames. What we can do is adjust the thickness of each layer to create the effect we are looking for. So we go to filter, correct line, adjust line width, and here we can thicken or thin each layer depending on the position of the fire. We do this for every frame on the timeline. The last thing we can do to enhance the composition is to change the opacity of the background. For this we can create a layer on top of the background, set it to multiply, and paint with a similar tone to the general scene. Now we can enable the keyframe for this layer and change the opacity a couple of times across the timeline. This will make the scene go from light to dark at the rhythm we choose. And this is how our finalized scene looks. You can do this with animated characters, different scenes, and cameras as well. You can even blur every frame of the animation folder of the fire to create an effect of a blurred foreground or even an explosion. It all depends on your composition needs. Just build upon this. And that's it. I hope you all found this useful. You can check my animations on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. I'll see you all in the next tutorial. Goodbye.